All right, welcome to Physics G-Force, where we use the force of Google Apps Script to learn how to make some physics programs and to hopefully extend our learning in physics. We're going to learn how to code in Google Apps Script. The acronym for that is GAS, which is basically JavaScript. There's a couple of differences, but it's basically JavaScript. And we're going to kind of show you how to do that here in a second. But before we kind of go into the script part, we're going to go into Google, and you're going to open up a new spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet app. And we'll call it something. We're just going to be practicing here on this one. And one of the major things in any kind of coding is assigning variables. And really that's what a spreadsheet is technically doing. You have these cells, and you can think of these cells as like containers of little information. And we put different things in different pieces of information in these containers, and then these containers technically have a name. All variables have some kind of a name. So this particular container right here is called C4. So we have the column and we have the row number, so it's technically called like C4. And I can put something in there. I can put like a 6 in there. I can put like a number in there. And so what that did is it assigned the value of 6 to the variable called C4. And to make that look maybe a little more obvious is I can, if you know a lot about Excel or Google spreadsheets, you can usually start something with an equal sign. I can actually put equals 6. And an equal sign is going to be important because that's what we call an assignment symbol. It's going to assign the value of 6 to a variable, which in this case is called C4. We don't have to name it right here. But I could do equals 6, and that's the same thing as like putting a 6 in there. I could assign a value to the variable called C5. I could do equals 10. And so I could have that in there. And then I can assign a value to the variable C6. And what am I going to put in C6? So I'm going to do something interesting here. I'm going to do equals, and then I'm going to do equals. I can use variables instead of actually adding these numbers. I could say equals C4, because that's a variable I've already assigned as a value, and I could do plus, and then I could do C5, because that's another variable that I have. These aren't very exciting variable names. We're going to have better names when we actually start doing this. But these could work for now. And I could hit return, and then I have just assigned the value of 16 to the variable C6. I could do equals, well, I could do it this way. I don't have to always have a number as a variable. I could also assign text, which we call a string. I could type in hello world, and that is actually, Google's really smart. It's going to format that as a text variable instead of a numerical variable. If I wanted to actually do that with the equal sign, I could do equals, and I'd have to actually, you put strings, text, you put it in quotes. So I'd have to do like a quote, hello world. I have to put it in quotes. So I'm going to assign D5 to equal the string hello world, and I could hit return there, and that'd be the same way of doing it. Yeah, okay. So that's, some kind of basics idea of a variable is like a container, and you can put things into that container, and you can name that container kind of anything you want. Okay. So that's the basics right there, and we're going to go into our Google Apps script. So with every Google Sheet, you can assign scripts coding to that particular sheet. So we're going to go up to Tools, and we're going to go into Script Editor. It's going to be very important. Script Editor. This is where we're going to be doing a lot of our coding. and we have an untitled project, and this you'll see there's two tabs here. This is the sheet, and this is going to be the script project that's going to go along with it. So you can call that project something. We'll just call it practice also. And the first thing you're going to see in this, there's going to be a tab that opens up called code.gs. GS stands for Google Script. You can rename this if you want to. You can just call it practice.gs. You just leave it practice and it'll change it for us there. And the first thing that comes into it is a function. And we're not going to talk about this right away, but it's important because functions are basically your program. So you can have all the code that you need to run, you need to have inside a function. Now, you can have a whole bunch of functions. I can copy this whole function and I can have, other functions. And the key word here is function, and then you can name what your function is. So I'll call this practice. So here's a function called practice, and I can put a lot of code into it right here. Then this could be another function called something else. I don't know, whatever it wants to be. But we only need one function at a time right now. And so I have this function called practice, and I can save it. And you'll notice that up here in the drop-down that it's going to have a list of all of our functions that we have on this page. We only have one called practice, but so in between these curly brackets is the way. So there's a keyword function, and then there's a name for the function, and then there's going to be parentheses, open and close parentheses, and these are going to be important because functions can take parameters or arguments. There's different words we can use for it that we can put in here that can get pulled into this particular function that we can do code on. So all the code then gets done in the curly bracket. So I have an open curly bracket and a closed curly bracket. So all functions will have this basic framework. And then inside here, you'll put different code. Before we do that, what I'd like to show you is actually how to write comments in your code. Comments are, and there's a way to write comments in every single kind of language that you could code in. And they are extremely important, and I just take my word for it. I have taught myself most things, and I have always been terrible at commenting, and that has basically ruined my life. So you need, when you're making programs, comment what your code is doing. So the way to comment things in JavaScript is you could do a single comment line, and that's just 2 backslashes, and then you could say all of my code goes here. Okay, if I hit return, see, but now I start doing something, see, now I'm out of my comment. So this is 2 backslashes, just a single line of comment if you want. So we might do something like that up above the function. We might go like, this function will be used to practice learning about variables. Okay, and so the point of a comment is it does nothing to your programming. It doesn't interfere with your programming at all. It's not part of your actual code. It's just a comment to explain something to yourself. Now, sometimes you'll want multiple lines, and you could do that by just always starting each line with these 2 slashes, but that's kind of annoying if you want to do a whole paragraph. So instead, what we're going to do is you can do multi-line commenting by doing a backslash, and then instead of another backslash, you do a star. And then I can come down here and I can do the reverse. So I could do a star and asterisk and then a backslash. And I can do, I can put a whole bunch of text in between those 2 things. So I can do a multi-line comment by doing that. So that's how you comment. I can click save that thing, and we haven't really done anything yet. But that's how you do commenting. And then we're going to practice different variables within this function here in our next video. Okay, this first thing we're going to learn about variables is we're going to, let's change this comment here. Let's say we're going to learn about number variables. So we're going to make variables. We're going to make variables that contain number. So here's how we declare variables. We use var, stands for variable. So we do that, and it kind of turned purple there, so you kind of know that it's like it's a key word, like function is a key word. They're important things that you can't really use otherwise for other things. And then I'm going to write a name of a variable. And you can call it whatever you want. Generally, we use letters. You can use some numbers in your variable name. Your practice is you never start a variable with a number. You can use some underscores in your variable name. Let's say I want to call it, I'm going to make a variable, I'm going to call it my variable name. So I might do my variable name. And then all declaratory kind of statements always end in JavaScript end with a semicolon at the end. So here I have created a variable called my variable name. Now, if you notice the way I did this kind of, you don't have to do it this way, but the structure is, notice how I didn't capitalize this first word, capitalized the second, and I capitalized the third. This is called camel case. It's kind of a way, it's just kind of a way that some coders like to do things in camel case. It's called a camel because obviously there's humps. The capital letters are humps, sort of like a camel. So I can do a variable called my variable name, and or I'll just call it my variable. Let's just do it my variable. And then what I can do is I could do my variable, and see how it's kind of a light blue because I've already declared the variable here. Now I can assign the variable something here, and the way we assign a variable is we do equals. So my variable equals, and what do I want it to equal? Well, maybe I want it to equal 13, and then I do a semicolon. So I declared a variable, and then I just set the variable to 13. Now, this is in 2 lines of code, and I don't know anyone that really still does that. You can declare and assign your variable all in 1 line. So we're going to come back up here. I'm going to declare the variable, my variable equals 13, semicolon, and we kind of just do it all in once. So you do a var, my variable equals 13. And so there it is. I've established that my variable is a container, and it's holding the number 13. So we want to be testing a lot of the stuff we're going to learn with the variables here. So there's a way to test this. It's going to be a logger. We're going to do logger, logger.log, and then in parentheses, and then I have a semicolon on the end. So I can put different things in these parentheses, and it'll actually print it out in a log. So if I want to see what is in my variable, I can actually take that variable, I can put it in here, and I'll go ahead and save this. You can save this, or you can just go ahead and run it. You can run this function called practice. You can either click on it, or you can click Command R if you're on the Macs. And I click Command R, and it actually saves it and runs it. Now there's nothing showing here, so what you have to do is you have to go up to View, and you can click on the logs, and you'll see that it'll tell you logs, and it gives you like a timestamp here, which is not very important, I don't think. And then it'll print out whatever I was trying to log. I'm trying to log what that variable is, and it shows you the variable here is 13. And a quicker way to maybe do this for the future, if I want to see what the log is I can click Command Enter. Just click Command Enter, and the log screen will pop up. So I'll probably be doing that quickly, and you won't see me go up to View anymore. Command Enter for logs. Okay, so there's a variable, and I could then let's make another variable. Let's see, I could do another. Well, let's just keep this real simple. Let's make this x, and I'll make this one y. Now, normally I don't like that. I like to write out a whole variable if I'm, thinking what what it's about. But like algebra, I know this is kind of what it is. So we're going to make this 12.3, and okay, and then I'm going to do another variable. I'll do a var, and I'm going to make it be z, and I'm going to have that one be equal to, watch this, x plus y, semicolon. And then I could do a log, and I could say, okay, what is variable z? So I could put z in there, and I can Command R and run this function, and Command Enter and see what z is. Z is 25.3. So it's taken my 13 and my 12.3 and it's added them together as we would expect, and assigned that then to the variable z. If I do what's variable y, then variable y is 12.3. So it's working well. Okay. Now these are number types. In fact, if I come down here to this variable, and I can actually kind of run a function on this, I can say type of and put that variable in parentheses. And I can say logger.log, what's the type of y? So it's not going to actually print out y, it's going to print out what the type of y is. So if I hit Command Enter, it says it's a number, which is, of course, is what it is. It's a number. And we're going to run this type of on several things when we're learning how to do our variables. We'll do type of. Okay. Good. Let's see. What else do we got? Okay. So we added things together. There's different operators that you could do. You can do minus, and then we'd see what z now is. It's 0.699999993. Okay. Good. We can do divide by, which is just a slash. We could do multiply, which is the asterisk. There's some kind of trickier ones. You can, like if I want to take something to an exponent, let's say that x is 8 and y is 3. And I want to do z equals like x to the y power, so 8 to the third power. How would I do that? Well, I have to call a math function. So I do math and then dot, and you'll see a whole bunch of things you can use. There's all kinds of stuff in here. So if you look through, there's square roots. There's actually how to get pi, absolute. There's arc sine and sine and cosine, random number. Here is the one we want, power. And you'll see you do a power number x to the power number y. So if I want to do that one, I think I can actually click on it. Actually, it just pops it in there. So math.power, and actually this is perfect because I call this x and I call this y, but maybe we should do that so a little different. We'll call this one num, and we'll call this one the power, or we'll call it exponent, exp. We'll call it exp. So if I want to take 8 to the third power, I would set z equals math.pow of num to the exp. Okay, and then I can Command R, and then I can Command return, and see I get 512, which is, I hope, what 8 to the third power is. I think that's right. Yeah, it should be. So that's how I can do an exponent. So there's a lot of things you can always look up JavaScript and how do I do a power. I mean, just Google that and you'll be able to find out all these kinds of things. If you remember, math.pi was in there also. I can do that, run that, and there it is. There's pi out to pretty far. Okay. I can do sine. I can do random is a cool one. It can be very useful. Random. You got to do, I think it like that. Run that one. And you get a 0.444. For the random function, you get something from 0 to 1. 0 to 1. So what you really need to do maybe is you could take the whole random, math.random, and take it like times 10, and then I should get from something from 0 up to 1 times 10. So I get 0 to 10. So I got 6.35, something like that. Okay. So that's the random thing. That's pretty good too. Oh yeah, there's another one, weird one. So if I do num divided by exp, I'm going to get 8 divided by 3. So I'll just run real quick. And I get 2.666666. Okay, so which is what you'd expect. Now, here's a weird one. Num percent sign exp. So the percent sign is a valuable one. It's called the modulus, and it means take the num, divide it by it still means divide by the exp, but don't assign the answer to z, assign the remainder to z. So you take any number, divide by another number. If it's modulus, instead of the divide sign, it's actually going to assign the remainder to it instead of the number. So what's 8 divided by 3? The remainder is 2, right? The remainder is 2. So 3 goes into 8 twice, right? And that makes 6. 6 from 8 is 2. So the remainder is 2. And you can use this a lot of times to see if your remainder is 0. Like let's make it be 0. So 4 will go into 8 a good enough number of times, right? So I'll do that, and see I get a remainder of 0. So if I wanted to see if a number was even, I could divide it. I could do modulus 2, and then I should always get a remainder of 0 if it's an even number. So the modulus thing comes in handy. It's kind of an important one. Let's say I have 8.3545, something like this. Okay, and I'm going to do num plus exp and see what z is, log it, 12.345434. Okay, good. All right, let's say that I want to actually only I only want to go out to like two places. I can run a function on my z that so it's going to be dot. I could do 2 fixed, and then I could put in a number of decimal places. So I'd put like 2. So if I do z, whatever it is, dot 2 fixed of 2 places, then I could run that. And whoops, I am missing a parenthesis. You're always going to get some errors there, and you have to figure out what they are. So, so now I get 12.35. It only went 2 places past the decimal point. Okay. Now, an interesting thing about this is if I do type of this whole thing right here, and I run it. Okay. It says it's a string. That's important. So it actually, you might want to do this to fix thing, like at the very end when you're wanting to like report the answer back out on like an output page or something, because it's actually going to turn it into a string. This to fix thing actually makes it into a string value. It's no longer a number, so you can't really be adding it to other things and stuff. So that's kind of important for that. Okay, so that's numbers and how to add them and do different math operators on them. And really one of the most important things is the math dot and the different functions that you can possibly do with that. Okay, one last thing I forgot about with the number of variables that I'd like to show you, kind of important. We're going to set up a variable called num, and we'll have it be equal to like 8. Okay, so now I've established I declared a variable called num. I've assigned it the value of 8. Let's say I want to add 2 to it. So what I do is I reassign num equals. I don't have to declare it again because I've already declared it. So num is going to equal num plus 2. So num is 8. So now I'm going to reassign the value to num, but num is still 8. So num, the reassigned value, is going to be 8 plus 2. So my new value then should be 10. So if I run this log, then you'll see that it's 10. Okay. So now it's 10. So if I do num again equals num plus 4, well, see, now num is 10. So now this is going to be 10 plus 4. Now the new num should be 14, right? And it is. Okay. So going back here, there's a faster way to do this. So instead of just taking num equals num plus 2, what I can do instead is do a shorthand notation. So if you can remember this will be helpful in your future. Num, instead of doing num equals, I can actually do num plus equals 2. That is the same thing as doing this. So instead of num equals num plus 2, and I'll admit, a lot of people like to just go ahead and write out like this because it makes more sense maybe. But a shorthand way of doing it is num plus equals 2. You can't do num equals plus 2 because that'd be something completely different. Num plus equals 2 will work. So I'll just prove that it works. So I have num equals 8, and I do num plus equals 2 means it's going to add 2 on to whatever the num was, 8, and reassign it. So now it'll be 10. There it is. Okay. And you can do that with anything. So like if I wanted to do like num equals num times 2, I could do, instead of the shorthand method, would be num times equals 2. Num equals times equals 2. And this should be 16 instead. So you can do it that way also. Let's see. I guess one last thing is, like, what if I want to just increment this by 1? I could do num plus equals 1, right? That's going to add 1 to it every time. I'll just run that real quick. So 9, okay? But there's even a shorter cut if you want to just increment it up or increment it down. If I want to just increment it by 1 each time, all I have to do is num plus plus. Num plus plus means just increment it up by 1. So if I run that, I do it like this, now it's 9. What if I do it like a whole bunch of times? So this is 8. This will be 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Should be about 14 if I run it now. Okay, 14. Which, of course, I don't know why I would ever do that. But that's how you can increment it up. You can increment it down. You might have guessed already. Now minus minus. And so that'll be a 7. It'll be taking it down 1. So that's one more thing I thought I better show you about variables with number variables. Okay, this video we're going to learn about string variables. So I have my practice function set up again here, and I have my logger so I can log to see the kind of experiments and the results that we're going to have here. So I'm going to declare a variable, my string, I guess I'll call it. You can call it anything I want, equals, and then for string variables, you need to have things in quotes. So welcome to this tutorial on Google Apps Script, or GAS. And then we semicolon at the end. So there's a string called welcome to this tutorial on GAS. I could log what's in that my string container. So I'll command R to run this, command enter, and it'll say welcome to this tutorial on gas. That's what's in that particular string. Let's make another string. Well, let's do this. Let's do let's go ahead. Var string 2 equals I hope you enjoy. Okay. All right. So now I got two strings. Then I could do another string, var final output equals, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these two strings. So I'm going to do my string plus string 2. What is that going to do? In our number variables, you could add them, and they would actually add the numerical values together. What happens here when I add two strings together? Final output, and I'll log that and see what that does. Command R and run this and save it, and then Command Enter, and you get welcome to this tutorial on gas. I hope you enjoy. So what this did, this plus sign does for strings, it's a fancy word. You ready for it? It's called concatenate. Concatenate. It takes the two strings and adds them together. That's why I actually put a space right in here. So I didn't want the I to be right behind the exclamation point. If you see what it looked like there, see there's a space in between there. But that's because I put it right there. If I went like this and then I ran that again, you'd see it's kind of right, they're all mumbled up there, so it's not very good. Okay, so you can concatenate two strings together there. Let's, by the way, let's do the type of thing on this. So type of final output. So it's not going to print final output, it's going to print what is the type of the variable final output, and of course it should be a what? It should be a string, which it is. Okay. Let's do this. I'm going to set up another variable. I'm going to call it num equals, and I'm going to make it be 6. Now this is not a string. This is a number variable. What happens if I do string 2 plus num? What if I do num plus string 2? It's going to take a number 6 and it's going to try to add it onto a string. First of all, before I even check to see what it actually is, I'm going to still keep the type of and just see what is the type of this thing. What do I get if I add a string to a number? And if I look at that, I get a string. Apparently, I get a string. Okay, what is it? You know what? Let's just copy this again and take this out. So now it'll be logging two things. It'll be logging the type, and it'll be logging what final output actually is. Command R, Command Enter. It's a string, and it says 6. I hope you enjoy. So it actually turned the 6 into a string and concatenated both of those together. So if I take a number variable, add it to a string, I'm going to still get a string. If I do, what is the type of num? It's a number, right? Okay. What if I do this? What if I do var number equals 6 in quotes? Okay. What is the type of number? And what does it say? What is number? Command R. Return. It's a string, and it still says 6. So from your output, you can't tell if this is a string or a number. But from the type of, we can see that this is a string. If I did, the type of num, that would be a number. But whether I put number in here or I put num in here, that would still be printing out a 6. So it can be confusing, and you can lose track of what the type is. So you kind of gotta remember there. Okay, let's do this. These strings are interesting. They are basically what we call arrays. Also, we haven't talked about array variables yet, and we will here shortly. But these are basically arrays, which means it's a list of a whole bunch of different items. Each letter and space and exclamation point are actually different items in the thing. So what I can do is I could do var, I could do, well, let's just do this. Let's just come down here and in the log, let's do my string. Okay, oh, what in the world? Can't type at all. My string. And then what I can do is I can get an index number. So I'm going behind my string, which is this whole thing here. I'm going to do a square bracket, and I'm going to type in a 1 and then another square bracket. Okay, and so that's going to go into my string, which is right here, and it's going to give me the letter that is in the 1 position of the string. Okay, so let's so think about what that might be, and then let's whoops, oh yeah, so I got to get rid of that too because I don't have num anymore. So okay, let me do that now. Okay, and so what is going to be in the 1 position of the my string? I run it, and it is the E. It's that E right there. So this is a major understanding that you need to get for computer science. Numbering things in the list do not start with the number 1. They start with the number 0. Everything starts with 0. So position 0 is always your first position. Position 1 is your second position. And yes, that will destroy your mind. So you will come up with errors because you have forgotten that. That's just classic hard to remember because we usually kind of start counting 1, 2, 3. We don't ever start counting 0, 1, 2. Well, in computer science, we always do. We start with 0. So if I want item, if I put in what's my string at item 0 and I do it, then I'm going to get the W. So I can get whatever position I want of this whole particular thing. Let's see. Can I do this? I'm not sure I can even do this. Let's try this. Let's do -1. Does this take a -1? Let's see. So in total experiment here. Undefined. It's not going to take that. Okay, so there's certain things that'll take a negative, and you can count from the back side, but that's not one of them. Okay. I think maybe we'll try something here like that in a little bit again. Okay, another thing I can do on this is I can on my string, I can slice it. So I can do a dot slice, and I can cut out parts of the string. So my string dot slice, and then in parentheses, I'm going to put the letter I want to start at, the position of the letter I want to start at. So let's go ahead and do position 0, and then a comma, and then the position that I want to end at, or I guess technically the position that right before where I want to end. So this is tricky. So the W is 0, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I actually want to go to 7. So when you're slicing something, this is important. These words are important. The first digit here is what we call inclusive. It will be included. The last digit is what we call exclusive. It will not be included. So if I want to go from position 0 to 6, I need to write 0 to 7. A lot of things in computer science are going to really bother you. But stick with it, and I think you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to get the slice of my string from 0 to 7 is what that's going to do. So we'll hope this works. I'm going to run it. I'm going to log it, and it says welcome. Okay, so I'll just randomly put in some things here. I don't know where we're going. I'm going to go 10 up to 17. I'm going to run that, see what that gives us. That gives us this space T. So right in here, and then the space, and then that T is what it gave us. So we can slice these strings up with this dot slice thing in the parameters here. Another really pretty good one that you can do is a dot length. So my string dot length, what does that do? That says 32. So there's actually 32 characters. If I counted them all up, including spaces, there's 32 characters. It actually told me the length of the entire string. That can be valuable sometimes. So just do a dot length on your myString variable, and you'll get how long it is. Now remember, the first digit is 0, so this last digit right here, this exclamation point, is actually 31, right? Because there was 32 total. So 31 and then a 0 makes 32. So your length is always going to be one more than your position of your last little digit right there. Okay, let's try something really fun here. So let's do, I'm going to do a variable first name. I'm going to do a variable last name. Okay, and then I'm going to do variable email. Whoops, can't use that dash. Email equals. Okay, so what I need, the style of our email addresses at my school is like last name, first name. I'll do a comment here. Last name, first letter of your first name at urbandaleschools.com. So I want to do an email that can make that with just these two variables. How would I do that? So the first thing I need is what? I need this last name, right? So I could do last name. Okay. Now that is going to be a capital H though, because the way it's in here. So here's another thing that you can run on any one of these variables. You can do a dot. There's these methods that you can run. You know, we did like dot length, we did dot slice, we're doing a dot log down here. On this last name variable, I could do a dot to lower case, and I have to do open close parentheses. So last name dot to lowercase. Okay, I'm just going to close it for just a second there, and we're going to log that and see what it says email is. Okay, so I'm going to run that, and then I'll check it out. It's Herman, but it's all lowercase. So it's going to take any capital letters in the string, and it's going to make them lowercase. Okay, you can imagine that there's probably a to uppercase, right? I hope. I would assume. Yay, it's good. Okay, so, but we want this lower case. Okay, so now I have last name to lowercase. So that's Herman, plus, what do I want? I want the first letter of first name. How do I do that? Well, I do first name, and then I can do I can get the index of it, and that would just be the first one, which would be item 0, right? First name 0. Now that's going to be a capital M, right? So I'm going to do dot to lower case. Okay, so let's just run that and see what I got so far. So I got Herman M. Good. What else do I need? Now I need plus. I need to concatenate the ending. So I can just go ahead and do a string right here at urbandaleschools.com, and that should be good. So run that, return it, Herman M at urbandaleschools.com. So I can, later on maybe we'll make a function of this on our spreadsheet. I can take a column of first names, a column of last names, bring them into this function, and concatenate them and then return the email back to the spreadsheet is what eventually maybe we could do, which would be pretty cool. Okay. Let's see. Anything else for strings? I think that's probably about it for strings that we were going to cover right now. So we'll look at maybe some other types of variables in the next video. This will be a quick video on another variable type called Booleans. And Booleans is like logical reasoning. It's either going to be true or false. Those are the two options, true or false. And you can set a variable to be true or false. So I'll do a variable is cool, and I'll set it to be true. So is cool equals true. If I see log what is cool, and I run it, it'll say it's true because that's what it is. It's true. What about the type? Type of, what is the type of the variable is cool? We'll run that, and it says it's a Boolean. So we might run into this more when we finally get to our physics programs, where I can just set something to be true, and as long as it's true, a function might continue to run until somehow that Boolean gets changed to false, and then when it's false, the program will quit or something like that is how we can use that. So those are Booleans. Now I want to talk about a variable type called an array. Some languages call it a list. Kind of the same thing. I can make a variable. I can call it whatever I want, like my array, or let's call it my list of things. My list equals. And for arrays, you use square brackets like this. And it's going to be a list of things. So, and they can be different things. They can be different types. So you can have some strings, or you can have some numbers, or whatever. So I might do cardinals, and then I'll do a comma to separate all the items in the list. Cubs, comma. Just so we can show we can do different things, I'll do the number 32, comma, horses, whatever. Okay, comma, 5. Okay, so there is an array of items. And what we can do then is we could do, let's do my list. And just like, remember the string, I had a string of letters, and that was an array also. And I could actually put an index behind it and figure out what letter I was getting. In this, it's a list, so when you put an index behind it, you can see which item you're going to get. In fact, before we do that, remember we could do dot length. I think that still works. Does that work? My list dot length. Let's try this. Let's see. My list dot length. I run it. It says there's five items in this list, which there are. Okay, so that worked. So you can get a length of a list. I did a length earlier of a string, and that counted up how many letters and spaces and stuff there were. If I do the length dot list on the dot length on an array, then it's going to count how many items there are in this. If I want to print out the number 32, so what item is that? Well, this is item 0, item 1, item 2. So I would do square bracket 2, square bracket, and run that, return, and I get the item 32. Okay, I could do item 3, and it should say horses. Okay, So this is an array. It's a list. It can be a list of a whole bunch of different things. If they're strings, you got to put them in quotes, and if they're numbers, you don't. And you separate all your items with commas, and the lists are with square brackets. That's important. Okay. Now, what I could do to make it even more interesting is I could do a list of lists. So I'm going to put a square bracket out here. Whoops, a square bracket out here. And I'm going to hit return so that you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to return down here and put my ending square bracket. Why do I keep doing that? Ending square bracket. So here's one list inside the list, and so I can put a comma after that, and then I could copy that list and put a whole bunch more lists in here. Let's mix some data up here. Let's call this Mets and Giants and Phillies and Tigers and let's see, Bubba's and the A's. Let's do some different numbers here. Sorry, I should have probably just had this already. Okay, so there we go. So I have a list, and inside the list there are 4 lists inside this list, and in each list, sublist, there's 5 items. So now this is interesting. What if I do my list dot length? What is the length of this variable, my list? Well, if I run that, you'll see that there's 4. How could that possibly be? Well, there's 4 items in the list. Now, each one of those items is actually a list, but there's only 4 of those items in this particular list. Now, how do I reference, like, for instance, Bubba's? I want Bubba's. Okay, so what item in the list of my list is it? Well, it's this list is list 0, this list is list 1, this list is list 2. So it's going to be in list 2, so I'll do index 2. I keep doing that, I don't know why. List 2, and then so that puts me in this list, and then I want this item in this list. So this is item 0, item 2, so I want item 2 of list 2. So I'm going to do item 2, index 2, and I'll run that and see the log, and hopefully it says Bubba's. It does not. I messed up. So what I do? Oh yeah, 0, 1. I forgot to count by 0. So this is 0, this is 1. So I need item 1. Command run. Bubba's. There we go. So what if I wanted to say ponies? I list 0, list 1, list 2, list 3. And so this is a multi-dimensional array here, is what we have here. So then I'm list 3, I'm at item 0, item 1, item 2, item 3. And we run it, and it should say ponies, which it does. Okay. By the way, let's do this. What is type of, what is my list? What is it? What is it? Ready? Be surprised. Here we go. Be surprised. It says it's an object. Okay, so we haven't talked about objects yet, but in JavaScript, basically arrays and objects are basically the same thing. The objects in JavaScript aren't quite like what objects are in other programming languages, but and it's not going to say an array here. It's actually going to say that this is like an object. So objects and arrays are basically going to be the same thing here in Google Apps Script. All right, one more thing about arrays before we put it array is a couple of methods we want to run on some different arrays. So in my function practice here, I'm going to put in an array. Let's see here. Let's do fruits. Let me do a var fruits equals, and remember arrays are square brackets, so I'm going to do strawberries lemons apples oranges. Okay, so there is an array for fruits. If I put in fruits down here and Command R, run it, and Command Enter to log it, it shows me my array of things that include apparently lemons. I don't know what that is. Okay, so a couple of functions or methods that I can run on the array. If I want to maybe add an array on the end or take it off, that's called pop. So I can what we're going to do is we can do pop and we can do push. These are ways to add things on or to take things off. So if I want to take something off on the end, and I'm going to go ahead and do I'm going to set up a var for this. I'm going to do var fruit equals, and I'm going to do fruits dot pop, and you'll see it put in there automatically, and I'll do that. And then I'm gonna do a logger on the fruits, see what the fruits say, and I'm also going to do a logger on what fruit is, and we'll run this, and you'll see that the fruits now, the last one, the oranges, have been popped off. So pop takes the last item out of your array. You can set up a variable and you can pop that out and put it into a variable. So when I popped it off the end, I have the fruit now was the oranges. Okay, I can also do fruits dot. I could do the opposite of pop is push. I could do push, and I could actually put a new item into the list. So I could do like grapes. So I'm going to push the item grapes into it. And so we'll do that. And you'll see that now my list is strawberries, lemons, apples, oranges, and grapes. Now what's interesting is about the fruit variable. When I pushed it to fruit, the return that comes back into fruit is actually the length of the array. So now it says 5. There's 5 of those things in there. So when I did var fruit and I popped it, it actually put whatever I was taking off, it put it into this variable. But when I push something to this array, in this variable here, if I do it this way, it's going to actually tell me the length of the array right now. So pop and push, take it off or put it onto the end. Or I could do shift and unshift. And this does basically the same thing, but it puts it onto the front. So I could do fruits dot shift. We'll do that. Fruits dot shift. And you'll see I had strawberries, lemons, apples, and oranges, but it took the strawberries off the front and it put it into the new variable. I could do unshift, and I could add in, well, we'll do the grapes again. Grapes. And we'll try that. And so it added grapes on the front, and then again it tells me the length of the array in the that fruit variable. So pop and push takes it off the end or pushes it onto the end. Shift and unshift will take it off or put it back on to the n. Another thing we can do is, remember, we can do things like this. We can do var fruit 2, and if we run that, let's see, I'm doing something wrong here. Okay, var fruit, whoops. I don't want to do that. I just want to forget that. I just want to do this. Fruits 2. There we go. You'll see it's apples because it's, the fruit is strawberries, lemons, apples, oranges, and apples is in the 0, 1, 2 spot. Remember, we start with 0. So I can index, the arrays, which we already did. So what that means is that I can actually change one of these arrays. So if I want to change 0, 1, 2, I want to change apples to blueberries. Then what I need to do is I can do fruits and index 0, 1, 2. So fruits index 2, whoops, equals. So I'm going to assign, in this position, I'm going to assign something. So I'll do blueberries. Okay, and if we run that, we do that. Now I have strawberries, lemons, blueberries, and oranges. So I can assign to any one of these spots. I can change them out with something else if I just do it by the index. So hopefully that's a little bit more with arrays. Pop and push, shift and unshift, and then you can just edit any one of the things by calling the index on the array. Okay, we finally kind of want to talk about the variables called objects, which in JavaScript are very similar to basically arrays. We're not, I'm going to teach you how to kind of do this, but we're not really going to do that a lot in our physics programs. We're going to be calling methods on objects that are already built into Google, but this will kind of show you how kind of maybe complicated they kind of are. So I'm going to make a variable, and we'll call it, I don't know, teachers, okay, and equals, and this time we're going to be using curly brackets. So curly bracket, and close that up, okay. So in the curly brackets, we're going to have what we call key value pairs. So we're going to have key and then a colon and then a value that goes along with that key, and then we'll have a comma, and then we'll have another key, colon, a value that goes along with that one, and comma, and then a key, and then a colon, and a value that goes along with that one, and so on. And we can do as many as we want. This is really like an array. And remember how an array you had you just had a single thing in here, but they were indexed by numbers. So like there was item 0, item 1, item 2. It's really the same thing, except you can have these 3 things in here. And instead of going by 0, 1, and 2, you can go by whatever this key is, whatever this key is. You can actually name the places, I guess, is maybe the way I kind of want to say it. So so let's have a key word here that we're going to use is like name. It doesn't have to be in, it's not going to be in quotes. It's actually like I'm making my own kind of key word for this object. Now the value then, if it's going to be a string, it does have to be in quotes. So let's say name, well, let's call this first name. And so we'll say Mark, and then our next key is going to be last name, and the value for that is going to be, Herman, and then we'll call this subject. Maybe they teach, and we'll say physics. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so there is an object, and I can then do teachers, and see, normally I would do a square bracket like 0 to get the first item or 1 to get the second item. So, but now I don't have to do that. I can actually do teachers dot, and I could do like lname. And I'll run it. String literal, line 5, something's wrong with this. Oh, wait a minute. Whoops, don't have the end quote on there. Ooh, that's not good. Okay, can I run it now? Yes, I can. So command return, and you see it says Herman because I did dot lname. I could do a job description equals teachers dot f name plus teachers dot lname. So Mark Herman plus teaches, I need a space there probably, teaches plus teachers dot subject plus teaches, and that should say physics at Urbandale High School. Okay, and now let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to print out, I'm going to log out job description. Mark Herman teaches physics at Urbandale High School. I see we need a space in there. So really, I could technically I'd have to plus. Could do that. There we go. Mark Herman teaches physics at Urbandale High School. Okay, so so there's an object. So it's a key value pair. Key and a value. And now what I could do is I could put a whole bunch of objects in an array. I could kind of mix things up. So I could do, I'll start an array, remember, which was square brackets, right? And I'll end the array down here like this. And then I could do several objects in the array. So I could do Sarah Jakes teaches geometry. I could do Bass Cameron. See what he sits in a closet. All right. So I have an array and I have 3 objects in there. Let's do teachers dot length, and let's whoops, I think I need to oops, these need to be commas. These aren't. We're separating these objects like that. Okay, so we have an array, and then we have, these are items in the array. So if I do teachers.length, it'd be 3 because there's 3 objects in this array. 3 objects in this array. Now I could do this though. I could do teachers, and I could do like in the first object or the second object, this object, the middle one here, which would be object. This is object 0. This is object 1. So I could do in object 1. Square brackets. object 1 of teachers, and then I could do dot L name. And it says Jake's. So I can it's an array, so I can still get it by its index number, but these are objects, so I can get the next value by its keyword. So I'm kind of mixing my arrays and things up here. So I could do object 0, 1, 2. I could do object 2, and I could do what's the subject of object 2. And what is it? It sits in the closet. Oh yeah, that's what Bass is doing, sitting in the closet, just having fun. Okay, and that's about it for objects. Objects can get a lot more complicated. You can actually even have like you could do I don't know, job, and this could actually be instead of a thing, it could actually be a function. So you could do teachers to dot job, and then it could actually be a function that would actually do something. So that gets really complicated with objects. We're probably not going to take it any farther than that, but that's probably good enough to know that.